My wife cheated with her coworker while I worked 80-hour weeks to pay our mortgage, so I took the house and left her with nothing. I'm a 32-year-old guy. And for the past 5 years, I've been working 80-hour weeks to give my wife the life we dreamed of. Back when we first bought our house, it felt like everything I'd ever wanted: the soft hum of our new refrigerator, the smell of fresh paint, the feeling of standing beside Rachel on the front porch with the keys in my hand. That house wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of the life I'd promised her. So, I pushed myself harder than ever before. I took extra shifts, stayed late at the office, answered emails at midnight, all so we'd never have to worry about money. Rachel used to call me her rock. She'd text me little hearts when I said I was staying late. And sometimes she'd leave notes on the counter that said things like, "Don't work too hard. I love you." I held onto those scraps of affection like they were gold. They made the exhaustion worth it, but over time, the notes stopped. The dinners grew quiet. I'd come home to find her already asleep, or sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone with that blank expression, the one people wear when they're somewhere else entirely. When I'd ask how her day went, she'd shrug and say, "You're tired. Let's not talk about work." I told myself she was just giving me space, that she understood. I didn't see the loneliness in her eyes anymore, or maybe I just didn't want to. All I knew was that every bill was paid, every promise kept, and every dream checked off the list. I thought I was doing everything right. As I lay in bed one night, watching her back turn to me, I smiled anyway. I was proud of what we built. I had no idea that the very life I worked so hard for was quietly beginning to collapse behind me. It started with little things I brushed off as exhaustion or overthinking. Rachel began staying out later, saying her team was pushing a big project and they were celebrating deadlines with after-work drinks. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She'd been with that company for 3 years, and I'd met a few of her co-workers at a holiday dinner. They seemed decent enough. Still, something felt different. When she got home, her perfume lingered longer than usual, sharp and unfamiliar, not the soft floral scent she used to wear. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh while texting, that light giggle she hadn't used with me in months. When I asked what was funny, she'd say, "Just work stuff." You wouldn't get it. One night, I got home early, a rare miracle. I picked up takeout from her favorite Thai place, hoping we could eat together like old times. When she walked in an hour later, she froze at the sight of the food. "Oh, you were home?" she said, her voice caught between surprise and guilt. I smiled, pretending not to notice. "Yeah, figured I'd take a break before the next big project." She didn't touch her food. Said she'd already eaten. Later that night, as she showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A name flashed: Mark Work, followed by a heart emoji. I remember my stomach tightening, but I forced myself to look away. She had male friends. I wasn't insecure. I told myself that over and over until the words lost meaning. When she came out, her hair damp, she gave me that same tired smile and climbed into bed. I kissed her cheek and whispered, "I'm proud of us." "You know," she murmured something I couldn't quite hear. Maybe me too. Maybe nothing at all. That night, for the first time, I realized I couldn't remember the last time she'd said "I love you" first. The distance between us grew in ways I couldn't measure, not by hours or words, but by silence. I'd wake up before dawn, leave her sleeping, and return long after the sun disappeared. The house we once filled with laughter now echoed with emptiness. The only sounds left were the hum of the fridge and the faint tapping of her phone in another room. One evening, as I set my laptop on the kitchen counter, I asked, "You okay lately?" "You seemed off." She didn't even look up. "I'm just tired." "You wouldn't understand. You're never home anyway." The words hit harder than she probably meant them to. I stood there, waiting for her to soften, to meet me halfway, but she just kept scrolling. "I'm doing all this for us," I said quietly. "Yeah, well," she sighed. "Sometimes it feels like it's just for you." That night, I couldn't focus on work. Her words looped in my mind like a broken record. I started wondering if I'd made her feel unseen, if my endless grind had somehow made her lonely. So the next weekend, I tried. I booked a dinner reservation at the restaurant where we had our first date. I even wore the same cologne she once said she loved. But when we sat across from each other, she barely spoke. Her phone buzzed twice. Both times, she tilted it away from me. When I asked who it was, she forced a smile. "Work, always work." The candlelight flickered across her face, and for the first time, I didn't recognize the woman sitting across from me. The conversation felt rehearsed, her laughter hollow. That night, as we drove home in silence, I caught a whiff of that same perfume, the one that didn't belong to me. It filled the car, sharp and haunting, and somewhere deep down, I felt a truth I wasn't ready to say out loud. I was losing her, piece by piece, to someone I couldn't see yet. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. That's what exhaustion does, right? It twists little details into nightmares. But the more I tried to dismiss it, the louder the doubts grew. Every time Rachel smiled at her phone, every time she said, "late meeting," something in me tightened. One morning, as she rushed out the door, she kissed my cheek and said, "Don't wait up. Might be another long night." Her tone was light, casual, but her eyes avoided mine. I watched her car pull out of the driveway, and for the first time, noticed her effort. New clothes, a new hairstyle. She hadn't dressed up like that for me in months. At work, I couldn't focus. My coworker James noticed. "You look like hell, man," he said, half joking. I told him I hadn't been sleeping well. He gave me that look, the kind that comes from someone who's been there. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. I laughed it off. But his words stuck. That evening, Rachel claimed she was at a strategy dinner. I opened her shared calendar, nothing scheduled. Just blank space. I stared at it for minutes, my pulse pounding. Maybe it was a last-minute thing, I thought. Maybe she forgot to add it. But deep down, I knew when she got home near midnight. I tried to sound casual. "How was dinner?" She froze for half a second, too quick for most to notice. But I saw it. "Good," she said, forcing a smile. "Just boring work stuff." Later, when she showered, I glanced at her purse on the counter. Inside was a receipt, a restaurant downtown. 2 empty ears. A bottle of wine. No mention of a team. My heart sank. I held that piece of paper in my shaking hand and whispered to myself, "If I'm wrong, I'll ruin my marriage. But if I'm right, it's already ruined." I couldn't sleep after that night. The receipt sat folded in my wallet like a piece of evidence I didn't want but couldn't throw away. My mind replayed every late meeting, every cold shoulder, every faint trace of that unfamiliar cologne she sometimes came home with. I'd built our entire life on trust, and now I wasn't sure what foundation was left beneath it. 2 days later, I told Rachel I'd be pulling an all-nighter at work. She barely reacted, just nodded absently while scrolling on her phone. Her indifference cut deeper than anger would have. That's when I decided I needed to know the truth. The next morning, I left home early but didn't go to the office. Instead, I parked near her workplace and waited. My hands trembled as I watched her car pull out around lunchtime. She wasn't headed toward the downtown office. She drove across town toward a small CF by the river. I followed, far enough not to be seen. She parked, stepped out, and there he was, Mark. The same name from her phone. The same work contact. They hugged, laughing like teenagers. Then she leaned in and kissed him. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My mind went completely blank, like every thought had been erased. The woman I sacrificed sleep, time, and years for was smiling in someone else's arms during the hours I thought she was working. I snapped a few photos on my phone, not out of revenge, but because I needed proof that this wasn't some cruel dream. They sat together for nearly an hour, her hand resting comfortably on his knee, a smile wide and free. When she came home that night, I pretended everything was normal. I kissed her forehead, told her I'd had a long day, and watched her fall asleep beside me, like nothing had happened, lying there in the dark. I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "You can't unsee it now, but deep inside." Another voice answered, "Then make it count." The next morning, I woke up feeling hollow, not angry, not sad, just empty. I'd seen it with my own eyes, yet she still kissed me goodbye like nothing had changed. I watched her drive away and sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, staring at the coffee going cold in my hands. That's when I made a decision I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. If she'd been planning a double life behind my back, then I'd plan mine too. I opened her laptop when she left. She'd forgotten to log out. My hands shook as I scrolled through her emails, half hoping I'd find nothing. But there it was. Messages to Mark, dozens of them, hidden in a folder labeled Work Follow-ups. I clicked one, and my stomach turned. Once the divorce is over, we can finally be together without sneaking around. I'm tired of pretending. That sentence hit me harder than any confession could have. Divorce? She was already planning to leave, she just hadn't told me yet. My whole body went cold. For years, I'd been breaking myself to build a future she'd already decided to abandon. Something inside me hardened that day. I stopped thinking like a heartbroken husband and started thinking like a strategist. I called an old friend, a lawyer, and asked for advice. He reminded me that the mortgage, the deed, and every major asset were in my name. That detail, something I'd once considered a formality, was now my leverage. That evening, Rachel came home all smiles. "You seem quiet," she said. I looked up from my laptop and forced a faint smile. "Just tired from work." She leaned down, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "You always are." But this time, I wasn't tired. I was awake more than I'd ever been. And as she walked away, humming softly, I made a silent promise to myself. If she thought I'd keep breaking my back for her comfort, she was in for a rude awakening. From that day on, everything I did had a purpose. Every smile, every "I love you," every moment of silence, all part of the plan. Rachel thought she still had me wrapped around her finger, that I was too busy with work to notice the cracks forming in our marriage. But while she was sneaking around, I was documenting everything. I started small. I printed the emails, saved the photos, and moved my savings into a private account she didn't know existed. I stopped sharing my work calendar, stopped mentioning deadlines, stopped explaining late nights. Let her wonder. Let her think I was distracted. The truth was, I was watching. One night, as she brushed her hair in front of the mirror, she caught my reflection and asked, "You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" I met her gaze in the mirror. "Just tired," I said with a small smile. She tilted her head, that practiced concern flickering across her face. "Don't burn yourself out, okay?" "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied, holding her eyes a little longer than usual. She turned away first. I knew then that she could sense something changing, but she couldn't name it, not yet. Behind the scenes, I built my escape route. I contacted my lawyer again, drafted preliminary divorce papers, and updated the title on the house to reflect sole ownership. Every night, while she texted Mark, I reviewed financial statements under the guise of budgeting. The tension in the house thickened. I could feel it in the air, heavy, electric. Rachel tried to guilt-trip me into opening up again, claiming I was emotionally unavailable. I almost laughed at the irony. I stopped arguing altogether. Instead, I just nodded, listened, and memorized every word. Because soon, she wouldn't be speaking to her husband anymore. She'd be talking to the man who'd already planned her downfall. And she didn't even know it. The night everything inside me cracked didn't come with fireworks, just silence. Rachel came home late again, the scent of expensive cologne following her through the door. She looked tired, but not the kind of tired that comes from work. It was the glow of someone who'd just spent the evening in another life, one where I didn't exist. I sat on the couch pretending to read emails while my chest burned. "Rough day?" I asked, my voice steady. She kicked off her heels and sighed. "Yeah, meetings ran late again. Anyone I know?" She hesitated for a split second, barely noticeable, but enough. "Just the usual team." Then she smiled, that fake smile that used to fool me. Later, as he changed in the bedroom, her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The screen lit up with a message preview. "You looked beautiful tonight. Can't wait to see you again, Mark." My throat went dry. I heard her humming softly in the other room, completely unaware that her secret was lying in plain sight. That's when it happened. Her voice called out, cheerful. "Hey, babe, did you feed Max?" But instead of babe, she said, "Mark." The world froze. I didn't answer. I just stared at the phone until my vision blurred. She realized what she'd said and rushed into the room, face pale. "I meant you. I swear." I stood up slowly. "Don't. Just don't." She started crying, babbling about stress and confusion, reaching for me like that word hadn't detonated our entire life. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just walked past her, out the back door, and stood under the cold night sky, breathing through the weight pressing on my chest. That was my rock bottom moment. The point where love turned to ashes and silence became my only refuge. I'd given everything, and in return, I'd become a stranger in my own home. But as the night air struck my skin, one thought cut through the pain. She has no idea what's coming next. The morning after that slip up, something inside me shifted permanently. The heartbreak was gone, replaced by precision. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her consequence. I spent the next few days in quiet preparation, each move calculated like a chess game. Rachel had her affair. I had my plan. First, I gathered everything, the emails, the photos, the text messages she thought were hidden. I even printed bank statements showing the gifts she'd bought him, dinners, hotel stays, even a weekend trip she'd called a work retreat. Every lie, every betrayal, documented neatly in a folder labeled final draft. While she giggled through phone calls in the other room, I made my own. My lawyer finalized the paperwork, and we filed for divorce in silence. The house, car, and savings accounts were protected under my name. She thought she could walk away clean, but she was standing on ground that I built. On Friday, she packed a small overnight bag, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Don't wait up. We're staying late for the conference." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Take care, Rack." She smiled, maybe the last genuine one she'd ever give me, and walked out the door. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I called a locksmith. Within an hour, every lock in the house was changed. I packed her things into boxes, labeled them neatly, and set them by the garage. Then I placed the folder, the one with all her secrets, on the kitchen counter beside the divorce papers. On top, a short note: "You made your choice. So did I." When she came home the next evening, the garage code didn't work. Neither did her keys. She called, panicked. I let the phone ring. Then another call. Then 10. I finally texted her one line: "Check the kitchen." And as I stood at a distance, watching her realize it was over, I felt something I hadn't in months: peace. Cold, quiet, undeniable peace. Rachel's meltdown came faster than I expected. The moment she read the note, she started calling nonstop. Her messages flooded in like a storm. "Please, we can talk about this." It didn't mean anything. "You're overreacting." I didn't reply. Not once. Instead, I sat in my car across the street, watching through the windshield as she collapsed on the front steps of the house I'd built. The same house she'd bragged about to her friends, the one she planned to take half of. That night, she tried guilt. "I made a mistake, but I love you. You're my husband, my home." I stared at the message until the words blurred, then deleted it. She didn't love me. She loved comfort. And now, she was losing both. By Monday morning, word spread. Mutual friends texted me awkwardly, saying she was going through a lot. One even hinted that Mark had been fired. Apparently, their company had a strict no relationship with subordinates policy, and Rachel had unknowingly outed him. In her panic, she showed up at my office once, eyes red and voice trembling. "Please," she whispered, "we can fix this." I looked her straight in the eye and said quietly, "You fixed it the moment you chose him." Then I handed her the divorce papers. For a second, she looked like she might collapse right there. But instead, she turned away, muttering, "You'll regret this, maybe once." That threat would cut deep. But not now. Now, it sounded pathetic, the echo of a woman realizing her manipulation had no power left. A week later, she moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Friends told me she'd sold her jewelry to cover rent. Mark stopped returning her calls. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. My silence said everything. For once, I wasn't the man who worked himself to death trying to prove his worth. I was the man who finally stopped bleeding for someone who never deserved him. And for the first time in years, that felt like winning. In the weeks that followed, the silence felt strange at first, like walking into a room where someone used to laugh. But it wasn't painful anymore. Just empty. And in that emptiness, I finally started hearing myself think again. For years, my entire identity had revolved around being the provider. I thought that if I worked hard enough, loved fiercely enough, sacrificed deeply enough, it would guarantee loyalty. But sitting alone in that house, my house, I realized how wrong I'd been. Love without respect is just servitude dressed up as devotion. I started rebuilding slowly. I took a leave from work for the first time in a decade. I fixed the squeaky stair, repainted the living room, and learned how quiet could actually feel peaceful. I even reached out to old friends, people I'd ghosted because I was always too busy. One of them, Jake, invited me on a hiking trip, and I went. The air felt cleaner than it ever had. Maybe because I wasn't joking on lies anymore. Every few days, Rachel would still email, "I'm sorry, can we meet for closure?" "I still love you," I never replied. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. I'd already lived through the goodbye 1,000 times while she was still pretending everything was fine. One night, after weeks of quiet, I sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed over the horizon. I thought about the years I'd lost, the energy I'd poured into someone who only saw me as a safety net. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt gratitude for finally being free. I whispered into the fading light. Losing her wasn't my downfall. It was my release, and in that moment, with the house standing silent behind me and peace humming in the air, I realized something powerful. I'd spent years building a home for us, but now I was finally building one for myself. It's been almost a year since everything fell apart, and my life looks nothing like it used to, and that's exactly how I want it. The house feels different now. The walls don't echo with silence anymore. They hum with calm. I wake up to sunlight instead of anxiety, cook breakfast without checking my phone every 2 minutes, and breathe without waiting for the next disappointment to drop. I still work hard, but I do it on my own terms. No more 80-hour weeks. No more proving my worth to anyone. I've learned that peace doesn't come from a paycheck, it comes from knowing you're not being used. A few months ago, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just quiet dinners, real conversations, laughter that didn't feel forced. One evening, the woman I've been seeing looked around my kitchen and said, "You built this place yourself, didn't you?" I nodded, smiling faintly. "Yeah, every inch of it." She ran her hand along the counter and said, "It feels like a home, not just a house." That line stuck with me long after she left, because for the first time, it was true. Then, one afternoon, I got a message from Rachel. Just 5 words. "You destroyed me. Are you happy?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it without replying. There was nothing left to explain. No satisfaction in rubbing salt into her wounds. She had destroyed herself the moment she chose deceit over love. That evening, I drove home from work and parked in the driveway. The sky was burning gold, and my house stood steady against the light. I walked inside, closed the door, and just stood there, listening to the quiet hum of peace filling every corner. For years, I thought my worth came from how much I could give. Now I know it comes from how much I refuse to lose, and this time, every brick, every room, every breath inside these walls feels finally, completely mine.